Thank you all for coming. We have a great panel today, and there was an article written earlier this year in The Atlantic about Amazon and e-commerce and what it's doing to downtowns and how we're coping, and it specifically mentioned Greenfield, which was very successful in keeping Walmart out to kind of protect and preserve the downtown. But it's really hard to keep Amazon out when people can just be at home on their computers and shop for things. And really, I don't think it's something to be feared. In fact, it's times like these when there are challenges where you can really move things forward, and I think this is a really good opportunity to really look at our downtowns and see how they are evolving in good ways, and to make room for buying items that are available everywhere online, because it opens up space in our downtowns for not just, we don't need precious brick and mortar to buy underwear and things that you could get anywhere, but make room for really curated experiences, special products, places to connect with your community. And I think our panelists here have really done a good job with being competitive in this market. The article said that 83% of the people who use the internet have bought something on Amazon. That's a huge number. So what are they buying downtown? What is this opening up for non-Amazon kind of things? So I would like to introduce our panelists. It's going to be a conversation. We only have an hour and 15 minutes, so there's not a lot of time. To my left is Tess Poe. She founded Beehive Sewing Studio and Workspace in 2012 as a retail makerspace experiment in response to shifts in downtown commercial economies. Poe served as a community planner and researcher, is a longtime maker and designer, and spent nearly a decade as a fundraiser and communications consultant in Washington, D.C. She's the chair of the City of Northampton Planning Board and works part-time for the U.S. Department of Transportation. And Erin McLean is co-owner of Loot Found and Made, an industrial artifact and handmade goods shop in downtown Turner's Falls that periodically hosts art shows, fundraisers, and workshops. Prior to this, she was the art director for Lantern Books in New York City and owner and publisher of Arts Media magazine in Boston. She currently serves on the River Culture Steering Committee. And Kate Hunter is an artist and photographer born and raised in Greenfield. She is the co-owner of Greenfield Gallery, a Main Street storefront offering custom framing, archival printing, and local artist representation, as well as various other art-related services. She's on the board of directors of ArtSpace and is founding member of Franklin County Pride Committee. We have Allison Williams, is an artist and maker who has lived in New Zealand, Scotland, and France, and now lives in Turner's Falls, where she recently opened Flourish, a gallery, retail, and workshop space. She has an MFA in visual arts and was the Dean of Graduate Studies at New Hampshire Institute of Art. And John Del Conte is doctoral candidate in regional planning at the University of Massachusetts. His research focuses on creative placemaking and measuring the vibrancy of places. He also has a strong interest in cultural tourism and its value for communities. He has served as a board member of several local arts and culture organizations and teaches planning and the creative economy at UMass Arts Extension, the New Hampshire Institute of Art, and Westfield State University. And we have Natalie Blay, who everybody knows, Executive Director of Franklin County Chamber of Commerce and State Representative-elect for 1st Franklin District. She was previously the Chief of Staff at UMass Amherst, and has also worked for United States Reps John Olver and Jim Govern. So, we're going to start off with Tess. And we have roughly 10 minutes each, which may leave a little time for questions, but not that many. And if any of the panelists have questions, for other panelists, that would be interesting. Also, okay, so what kinds of shifts were you seeing in downtown economies that made you want to do this experiment?
The first shift was I'm crazy, so this is sort of like a personal shift. But there were a couple of things, and I think that the keynote speaker was really powerful, and some of the sentiments that she brought up, particularly about being able to kind of see personal trends and global or systemic trends. And so for me, the first shift as a planner and an economic development person was obviously seeing e-tailing, but also not just seeing people purchasing goods online and online sales replacing transactions that were happening in downtown, but the effect on consumer behavior and what the perception was of what a store would do. And so the shift that I saw that intersected with my own personal need was realizing that there are really, sort of three things that we're buying out of a storefront. We're either buying a product, we're buying a service, or we're buying a self-directed experience. And so I said, well, I can't be the only person in downtown Northampton or in the Pioneer Valley who would want to pay by the hour for flexible access to a sewing studio. And a lot of my previous research was about people who telecommuted or worked from home, and so I did a lot of work looking at developing co-working spaces, and this was about a decade ago. And so the shift towards looking at maker spaces was pretty natural. But what I saw was not just a need to create a maker space in the basement of a mill building that had all manner of equipment, that was a nonprofit, that was, kind of just a little bit different from what I wanted, which was a way to kind of help reactivate downtowns and think about how we can, again, shift consumer expectations and consumer behavior to say, oh, this is a storefront that I walk into, and I'm not just going to pick something up off the shelf, and I'm not going to just ask somebody to have my pants for me. I'm going to actually be self-directed. I'm going to actually be the person who's engaging in this experience. And so that was the big kind of impetus for it. And again, it also was that in terms of creative activity, I do a lot of different things. People are often surprised that sewing is not my primary hobby.
I was surprised.
I love sewing, don't get me wrong. But it really was one of the most space-intensive and equipment-intensive hobbies, and a lot of people don't have the space at home now. And we see trends in people living in smaller spaces, not having a fourth bedroom for a craft room or something like that. And then at the same time, it was also the activity that touched everybody. We're all wearing clothes. We all live in a place that maybe we have a blanket on the bed. Sewing activity was very universal. And I saw that even in the clientele at Beehive, where it was the full spectrum of people of all income levels, people of all skill sets, people of all gender, ethnic backgrounds, and people who really, truly just wanted and needed access to that kind of space and equipment. And so that was the big impetus, I think, to kind of test out from a business perspective what is viable, what's sustainable. And if you think about business activity in terms of a pie, what section of the pie could be revenue that's generated from the experience part of things, as opposed to the strict retail product sort of things. Now I will say I closed my storefront studio in downtown Northampton in May because it got enormously expensive. And I think I didn't figure out that pie, and so I think if I were to do it again, I would probably want to sell more product, to more gently ease people into a space like that, so that there is a way to generate enough revenue to sustain that sort of a model. But the interesting thing was, in the course of the experiment, it sort of raised a lot of new issues and new questions that I hadn't even considered. So one of the biggest things that I began to learn and untangle was the role of the real estate market and commercial real estate in downtowns. And as a planner, within the first 6 months, I had this eye-opening, wow, we don't know anything about the retail economy. And I had this immediate sense of guilt for all the plans I had worked on and written where we talked about, oh, you need a vibrant downtown and you should have shops and restaurants here. And it's like, wow, it's a situation that we don't always fully understand. And so figuring out the broader factors that will make a storefront, be filled or not, go further than someone hasn't bought this item there, or someone has bought this item on Amazon. And so, so that was really interesting to me, sort of picking out what some of these bigger trends were and things that we're up against at the municipal level when you have, you know, federal tax law that can subsidize vacancies. You know, you have disincentives to fill space sometimes. And you know, one of the most interesting things to me that Lisa mentioned, as far as the opportunity that we now have because of Amazon and e-tailing, is that we can bring a lot more transparency to industries and sectors and situations that maybe we didn't always fully talk about or understand. So now we can talk about, well, what is overhead? What does that mean when you walk into a storefront? You know, how is that different from you looking on your phone on Amazon? And what are the costs that the business owner is responsible for that you value but don't really have a firm conception of? Like, those are very important things for us to all kind of get comfortable talking about. So I think Lisa has more questions, so I'm going to consider that my answer to your first question.
Well, it's
so I can see the paper.
Now a lot of mass retailers are opening brick and mortar smaller shops, like Macy's and Nordstrom are opening up smaller boutiques that have a curated selection of items, and they're selling the rest of the stuff online,
Right.
the more generic stuff. Did you find a way to use the internet to your advantage in yours?
Yeah, so broadly, there's one use of the internet that's directly transactional. I'm going to sell this collection of vintage fabrics that I acquired online. I'm going to sell my organic cottons online. I'm going to develop a product line and sell it. Then there's the use of the internet that's 100% related to support and marketing and outreach, and that can't be ignored anymore. And so that's an upside in that we have these tools to reach a much different and broader audience in an immediate and different way. The downside is that for the brick and mortar retailer, it's an additional set of activities. So 40 years ago, when we look at overhead costs, for example, now it's like we've got to build in time and money for our website, for maybe paid social media ads, or so there's some trade-offs, but that's that's kind of where it was. But for me, selling online was never a huge piece of the pie that was able to sustain my costs per se.
Yeah.
But it definitely raised visibility, and it's a platform for sharing your idea and saying, yes, this quilted pillow is amazing and interesting and modern and lovely. No, I'm not trying to sell you that pillow. I'm trying to get you comfortable with the idea of learning how to do it on your own and then coming into a space and spending 2 or 3 hours to do it. So it's I think different ways of using the internet to kind of reach your goal.
Yeah. And how has what you learned influenced your role on the planning board?
Oh, what an interesting! I didn't know she was going to ask that question.
I just thought of it.
That's a toughie. So the municipal planning boards are limited. I think a lot of folks sometimes if there's one good thing that can come out of conversations like this, it's being able to really understand the systems that are in place that make change happen. And so planning boards can't go around and just say, oh, well, that storefront should be X and that should be Y. And it's easy sometimes, and it's fun to brainstorm about those things. Yeah. But even at a very basic level, when planners are talking about downtowns, when a new building goes up, for example, the Lumberyard affordable housing apartment complex in Northampton, the ground floor of that building is commercial space, but that doesn't mean retail. So, we separate out residential, commercial, industrial space, but we can't mandate that the person who steps up and is willing to pay the rent is going to be a retailer. Maybe it'll be a chiropractor, maybe it'll be a restaurant, maybe it'll be somebody who fixes violins, you know what I mean? You can't necessarily, maybe it'll be an accountant, you know, we can't mandate retail. And so that's something that is I think, important for people. We kind of say that at meetings sometimes, that we don't have control over, you know, shoehorning things into a downtown because we know they'd be cool and interesting. All we can do is kind of try to create the conditions that will encourage people, like several of us, to kind of take the risk and, you know, steward a storefront for some period of time.
Okay, well, we have 12 seconds left, and I have a question. Sorry. We'll come back, hopefully. Okay, so Erin, your shop in Turner's Falls has been around for 7 years?
Yep.
7 years. So that's like right in the time that e-commerce and Amazon has really like taken root. And so you've witnessed the downtown Turners has shifted a lot in that time period. What are you offering? What are you offering to keep people coming in, and how are you staying competitive during e-commerce, and how have you made small shifts in your business to accommodate this like pretty rapid change?
Well, I, don't think that e-commerce really has affected our business in any way, but that's because we sell all one-of-a-kind objects, found objects, and handcrafted goods. So what I tell people is that the pro is you never know what you're going to find, and the con is, you never know what you're going to find, for us, because you got to find it, so it's not something that we can just necessarily just order. But therein lies the beauty of it, and I think the draw of it is that it's that unique and special. So, and I think that, I spent a lot of time thinking about this, and, what are we offering? I think it's like, I feel that anytime somebody walks in the door, they're a guest, and that we're a host. And what I hope is that people feel welcome, and that they leave having had a good time. And so whether or not they buy something does not determine success. What determines success is that they leave happy, and that they come back. Hopefully they come back, and hopefully they are curious. So I think, that being said, being in downtown Turners Falls for the last 7 years, it has been difficult. It hasn't always been easy. So we definitely try to have events, and we try to do other things to keep it interesting for ourselves and keep it interesting for our customers. So we had a fun fundraiser for our local dog shelter called Rescued Art for Rescued Animals. That was a lot of fun, where we found paintings, and then we had artists paint images, and not just artists. This was open to anybody who wanted to participate who could participate. And then we raised money for the dog shelter. We've had workshops on how to be a DJ. What else have we done? We're having a workshop on aromatherapy. So it's about, I think, people, you want to call it an experience or call it a service. I think it's just sort of old-fashioned. It's kind of like you're welcoming somebody into your home and you're a host. It's really pretty simple, and it's about the people. It's always about the customer and your community, and recognizing where you are and all the people that came before you to lay the groundwork, the artists, the locals, and I always feel grateful every day to be a part of it. I also think that we bought our building, and so we bought our building 10 years ago, and I think that that's been helpful. We live there, so it's old-fashioned, mom and pop. We live right above our shop, and then we have apartments as well that we rent out. So that those moves helped to sustain us, I would say, in the first couple of years. And the other thing that helped to sustain us was the locals. Like, the customers for the first 2 years were all people I knew. They were all people from Turners Falls who just kept coming back and supporting us. And then I remember the day I looked up and I didn't recognize anyone in the store. And I felt like that was a success. I mean, I missed that I didn't recognize everybody, but I was like, oh wow, who are all these people? Where'd they come from? So I don't know if that entirely answers your question.
Yeah, no, it seems like you are having the downtown be a place to come and learn and connect with people, not just about the product. But it also seems like you have a diverse portfolio of incomes
Yes.
to
Yes.
keep you going. You have the rent, you have the workshops, you're selling things, and there's also, don't you consult with interior designers and stuff like that on the side?
There's not for any money. I mean, yeah. Well, we also, you know, John, my partner, he's the person who finds all the stuff, the found objects from factories, and so the markup there is really good because he's finding things at the source. So there's no middle person. He's going to people's barns and workshops and businesses. And you know, the other thing is people are craving connection. They really are. I mean, so yeah, it's easy to go online, but I read the article and I think local is not proximity and it's not ease of use. You know, local is like a story. It's connecting to an object. It's understanding who made it, when they made it, why they made it. And local is about looking at somebody in the eye and having a sensory experience, like walking into a store and hearing music and touching something. And so I'm not concerned about e-commerce in any sense. I think it's a great opportunity. I look at it as a chance for towns to work together to come up with like creative solutions, because this is a great opportunity to think of your downtown as a living room and you're inviting people into your home and you want to have different offerings for them, different kinds of food, different kinds of experiences. And if this is really cheesy, but I said to my partner John the other day, there's no I in downtown. So you have to look up from your business periodically. Yeah, you have to worry about your bottom line, but you have to look at your neighbors and you have to look at everything. And then you have to think of how we can work together, and you're a team and you're all building something together. So also getting back to what you were saying about planning, I think that you can't communicate too much amongst yourself as businesses, but also with your town. Because if you have a shared vision and you're all on the same page, if you want those commercial spaces to look a certain way, if you talk about it, you'll make it happen. And then all the people, your locals, they will find those people and it'll all work out.
So that kind of speaks to a lot of public and organizations that are working to rise all tides, all boats.
Oh yeah, wait Lisa, I wrote this down, that's in my notes. Rising tides raise all boats.
So you're a member of the chamber, you are also involved in river culture. Can you talk a little bit about how being involved in those larger organizations that have the bigger picture in mind has helped you and helped your town?
Well, absolutely. River culture, first of all, was one of the reasons that we chose to invest in Turners Falls. When we came to Turners Falls, initially we were just struck by the beauty of it, the size of it, the beautiful architecture, the natural landscape, the tree-lined streets, but also river culture. And that the town was committed to the arts meant something to me and to my partner John, and we thought that was a good sign. And also we saw that there were creative people in town, so I always think where there are artists, things are going to happen because of the way artists think and the way they have vision. And so Lisa was river culture at that time, and Lisa did a lot of really great, smart things that helped to draw people to Turners Falls. Really creative things. Also things like the laundromat fashion show. I think these are opportunities to be really niche, to be really specific, to not just curated in your space, but curated in your event planning for your town, and do things that nobody else has done. Like take the risk. It will. People will come if it's interesting enough.
Yeah.
And so river culture has been a huge part and continues to be a huge part of Turner's Falls.
Yeah, that's a lot about placemaking and what's special. John's going to talk a lot about that. But and also the objects that you have in your shop are about where we live. Like they come from Strathmore Mill or a mill in Orange, and you get to learn about your place and the history of these towns and the kinds of jobs that have come and gone, and really witnessing this evolution of this life that we're living. It's just so interesting.
And it appeals to all ages. That's the other thing that I find exciting about the store, is that you have kids coming in. We had this World War II dummy bomb, and this 12-year-old boy bought it, and he's just going to have it in his room as art. He was really interested in the story, and then his sister bought a handmade plaque from a local artist, and they were both around 12 and 14 years old. And that to me is really encouraging when kids respond to what you're doing. For me, that's like a major thumbs up, because you can't fake it. You can't fake it with kids. Or dogs.
One more quick question. You have been very active in helping to recruit other businesses to come into town. How do you do that? What is how do you pitch that opening a brick and mortar in a little downtown in the poorest, most rural county in the Commonwealth? Like, how do you convince people to do that?
It takes you to the people. It takes you to the rendezvous.
Lies people with alcohol.
Yeah, actually doing 3 gender libations and then you sign the lease.
Yeah, I think Allison can speak to that when she comes on. No, that is part of it. I tell people that we opened up a shop selling total non-essential objects in the middle of a recession in a town in the middle of nowhere. But somehow we've managed to do that, and that always gets back to the people. That always gets back to the community. So if you're good to, it's simple. If you're good to people, they'll be good to you. It's really very simple. And I think I'm very hopeful for the downtown. And so I think maybe I'm wrong, but that's what I basically tell people, is that I believe in it. And so that's how I recruit them, is I tell them the truth, is that it's very difficult, but I'm very hopeful. And I think you can make a go of it. So,
And the quality of life is good.
the quality of
It really
life is fabulous. You can walk everywhere. I mean, it's like you don't have 5 of everything or 10 of everything. You have maybe 1 or 2 of everything, but what more do you need? And so you're not going to get rich owning a store downtown Turner's Falls, but you'll make a living.
Tell me that.
Yeah, I did work that part out after you sign the lease.
You're rich in friendships.
You're rich in other
community,
ways. You're
yeah.
rich in other ways, and I think in this time of just like unchecked greed, I think it's important to talk about how much is enough, and creating a quality life and making a living.
Time's up.
Okay.
Kate,
Yes.
Greenfield Gallery. How many years have you been in business?
We celebrated our 3rd year in August.
Okay. Why did you take a risk in opening a brick and mortar gallery when there's so many galleries online? And what services are you offering? How are you getting people in? It seems like you have diversified, like you are offering framing and other services. Can you talk a little bit more about how that's going?
Sure. So the gallery started when I read an article in the newspaper about Rachel Katz, who had purchased the Little Rooney's building and was looking for, I had never met her and I didn't know who she was, but she was looking for other artists to help fill the space and to create some sort of artist thing on Main Street in Greenfield. And I was looking at the time throughout Franklin County for a storefront, I lived in Turner's also, storefront for a photo studio. I'm a photographer, and print shop. That was my thing. I was gonna open a photo studio that did archival printing. I met Rachel. She had this really great space. We talked about it for months. I actually started moving into the old Basecamp photo, and then we just started dreaming about all the things that could happen, and we developed this relationship where we got really dreamy and kind of sparked these other ideas, and kind of crazy. And like really sort of let's just go for it. So we decided, Rachel really wanted a gallery in front of that space, so I had a little tiny gallery one time in Conway, Massachusetts called the Conway Inn Artist. It was about this big. And so I was like, yeah, it's a really hard thing to do, to keep doing your art if you have a gallery space, but let's do it, let's try it. And there were a lot of people that were like, you're insane. You can't do a gallery in Greenfield, that won't survive, it will not happen. And we heard that all the time. More than we heard, like, this is awesome. We heard, this isn't gonna work, you're crazy. And we didn't care. I really love having a space. I'd like people to come over, I'd like to have parties for people. I've always loved that. So that's what I love about the gallery. Right away, we noticed we started, it was just an art gallery of local artists, and I did do the printing. The first few months I did a photo thing, and then I pretty much dropped the photo studio idea after the first 6 months, because there was just no time for everything. But what we did notice that first holiday season was that people came in and said, do you offer framing? Almost every day they came in and said that, and we're like, we should offer framing. So we partnered with another business owner in out of East Hampton, a framer, that's who we started doing our framing with. He kind of trained us on stuff, we took orders, he built it there. Long story short, we ended up just going for it and becoming framers and adding services that the community wanted. I feel like I could go on and on and on, but basically
listening to your customers is important, and not a lot of places do that. They have their vision for what they think they want to do, but stepping back and seeing, like, what do people actually want? What are they asking?
It has evolved quite a bit. We're doing workshops now also. That's been huge. I mean, there's so many ideas, so many new things coming too, and that's really exciting.
Do you think that the success of your business is directly related to being downtown? Because you had talked about being at Basecamp, which was not downtown, and so I'm wondering if the downtown is really an important part of your business.
I think so. Absolutely. I think there's a lot of things that are, visibility, yes. However, until we fixed the facade on the front of the building, nobody knew we were there. And we were busy from day one, so our marketing is very small. It's a lot of word of mouth, it's a lot of hoping people see us when they drive by. We have people come in all the time that, how long have you been here? I didn't know you were here. And that happens still, all of the time. And Greenfield Main Street is up against a lot of people who are fixed on the idea that they want it a certain way, and that way hasn't been like that in 50 years, and it's not going, or 30 years. It's not going to be that ever again. And I think that, I mean, I don't want to say, but some people say, like, you have to wait until they're no longer saying that, and then it'll all be okay. But there are I would say it's more than half of the people in Greenfield think there's nothing downtown. We're not even going to go that way. It's up to us to try to get them to realize that they're wrong.
Do you find that any public programs Do you participate in any public programs like Greenfield is a newly designated cultural district?
Yes.
There's a lot of energy around that. Do you participate in any of those initiatives? And
Absolutely.
how has that gone? And do you partner with others on projects?
Yeah, so Rachel, my business partner, we kind of break up, like I'm here, she went to the Art Week thing yesterday, and we break off on different
I
tasks.
saw her there.
Yeah. But Rachel is really involved. I think she's actually the president, right? Or the chairperson of the cultural council. So yeah, we're very much involved in that. I think that the Greenfield Gallery is smack in the middle of the cultural district. And I think that I'd like to think that we being there really helped us get that on the first try. And you know, we're helping, not so much me other than supporting Rachel and giving her time in her studio. But Rachel's doing quite a bit as far as the new project of bees, the Bee Fest, and developing some pretty awesome, I don't know how public it is.
No, I didn't know either. I didn't want to say anything.
How public is this?
I don't know, she stopped into my office with the prototype the other day, all bubbly about it, Linda.
Oh, okay, so there's a project happening in downtown Greenfield that if you walk by the gallery, you'll see the 3D printer in Rachel's studio window printing bees. And these bees are going to become big and in various locations throughout downtown, kind of like there were bears in East Hampton.
Because bees are part of Greenfield's history.
Yes.
It's about the sense of place.
Yes.
Like the first beekeeper was in Greenfield?
Yeah,
is
the
that right?
person who developed the first beehive.
Beehive, yeah.
But you have a 3D printer in downtown Greenfield.
Yeah, the window. It's
Oh,
really cool. And that brings in a lot of other ideas and other people
Yeah.
coming in, so it's exciting.
Yeah.
Did I answer that?
Did you remember what the question was?
Being involved in the cultural district,
yes.
like placemaking, programs that are happening, how does that help you bring customers in? I think honing in on what's unique about your place and having different businesses take their part in bringing that to life to people and out to people in their own way is a nice way to collaborate and a nice way to differentiate yourself from other places. You're not just a generic downtown, but you are a special downtown that people can come to for special things like learning about bees, and Turner's Falls is special in its own way. But some of the things, when you were talking about people coming, wanting the downtown to be like it was 50 years ago, and thinking about this new sort of richer communication, experiential, concentrated experience of the downtowns, does that limit or segment only certain kinds of people? Yes, you can buy anything, anywhere, like underwear online, and because there's too many places to buy too much of the same thing, but going downtown to get underwear, would that be the chance encounter of somebody who is not in the arts or is not the type of person that is only coming for this? Does it limit those chance encounters and communication with just the general people? I think that's maybe where public programs come in, that invite the whole community in to make sure those kinds of connections are still happening.
Yeah.
And a lot of that is through public places that the town sets up, and John can talk a lot about what makes a town vibrant and what brings diverse people together to communicate, to experience together. And it's no longer to buy items made in China.
Right.
So
Yeah, we have a ice sculpture, like we always sponsor the ice sculpture from the Greenfield Rec Department doing Winterfest, and that brings a lot of people into town. Things like that, taking part in that winter carnival or winter fest has been going on for a very long time, and so people of all walks of life come to that.
All right, your time's up. Stop, reset. Okay, Allison. Allison is a brand new business owner, just opened a month ago.
A month on Thursday, yeah. Last Thursday.
Start.
I'm the craziest.
So tell us about your brand of crazy that you decided to open a new shop. Why did you take the risk in opening this, and how did you decide? You obviously don't sound like you're from around here. How did you settle on this little downtown?
So I worked at Northfield Mount Herman for 5 years, a long time ago, 20 years ago, I think. And I loved it. I loved the whole area, and I used to love coming to Turners Falls. And a very good friend of mine opened Ristorante de Polo. Before Loot came into town, and I helped her get settled, and she bought a property in Turners Falls, and I just remember coming into Turners Falls, and I was just thinking it's so stunningly beautiful and interesting, and wanting it to grow in some way. And so then I moved away to Manchester, New Hampshire, which I think is interesting because it's like Turners Falls times maybe 100 population or something. You know, it's a very, very similar community. Struggling, old mill town, and just interesting. And then when I was thinking about, I finished my job as a Dean of Graduate Studies at the New Hampshire Institute of Art just over 3 years ago. And I was thinking, where am I going to live? Where do I want to be? And I went out and travelled around and drove up and down the country and went home to New Zealand and to Scotland and came back. And actually bought property in very southern Vermont, just outside of Charlemont, really, just across the border, with this big idea that I was going to start a retreat and create a lifestyle for myself and have people go there. And after living alone in the woods for 5 months, had a bit of a breakdown. Maybe it would be better if I see people. Probably need to eat something other than just a tomato. And anyway, so then I went back to New Hampshire and was working landscaping over there, and just kept coming back to Turners Falls. And so it's a little bit, every time I would come into Turners Falls, I'd be really upset if Loot was closed, because I would think, no, I want to go to Loot. And then just moving, my friend Denise DePaulo, her restaurant closed. She has a big house and needs someone to rent from her, and I love her, and so helping her, helping myself, and moving into that place and getting a studio around the corner from where the store is now, and making my clothes. And so part of what I've done in the last 3 years is move from painting and creating fine art to creating clothing as fine art, and selling that in various locations, off the website, in fairs, wholesale, and then actually going around to Stenhouse, which is down the street from the store that I have, to have her buy my things wholesale, had that all organised, and then Stuff, which is on the corner, was going out of business, and that space was for rent, and I didn't know who owned it at that point, but went into Stenhouse and she said, oh, Erin and John from Loot own it, and that made such a difference in my mind about, oh, I know who they are and they're really invested in the community. And then so Erin from Stenhouse said, I don't want to sell your things, I think you should have a shop. Not quite like that. She said, I will sell your things, but I think you should open a store of your own. And then having conversation with Erin, and it all just sort of like fell into place in some way. And when the store is called Flourish, and that company is actually called Flourish with Grit, because one of the first conversations I had with Erin was she was asking me what I wanted to do, and I said, you know, one of the biggest things I want is that Turners Falls flourishes but retains its grit, because it's such a beautiful place, and the diversity of people and the interesting people that you encounter on the street and the grittiness of it is what I love. And so trying to find a balance, and we do meet and have conversations. I've only been there a short amount of time, and so I think we're all just sort of feeling out like what we can all do together, is how to bring commerce and money into a community but not have it be too gentrified. It's really important to me that the people that have survived and made Turners Falls be Turners Falls feel connected and stay connected. And so partly what I've tried to do is, and I have a at the moment, you know, a gallery, an art gallery, a retail space where I sell makers and found objects, and also part of my space is going to run workshops. And I think that those workshops are where local community will really be able to participate. But then also just trying to be open for events like the Pumpkin Fest and having your door open. I'm not normally open on Wednesdays, but someone told me that Halloween happens and everyone goes up and down the street, and so I opened not so that I could make money, but so that people would come in the door, and because going into a new shop can be daunting, especially if you've not got lots of money, and I am a curator, and so I do like to make beautiful spaces, and sometimes that can be a little bit much. And so how to have it be welcoming and interesting, and I mean I want to contribute to society and culture in some way, and I'm an educator. I never intended to be an educator, but that's sort of ended up in my life, and so how to just bring all of those things together in some way. And the community has been amazing and welcoming and warm and fascinating and opinionated. And that's great, like it's great. And the person who owned the store before me, you know, calls me up and tells me that my sign doesn't look great, and that's great. He's contemporary, it's great, but he's so happy that I'm there. So it's just taking it all and figuring it out for yourself, and not thinking that I'm not the one that has all the answers. And so I think my biggest struggle will be finding enough time to do all the things that I've intended to do. And like wonderfully, the clothes are my biggest seller so far, which is really great, but like really scary. I'm like, no, because I've only got like this much time, like how do I do it? And I've never run a business before, so yeah. Okay. But then I also think, like I've done a lot of thinking about, you know, my own struggle with the democratization of that the internet brings. I love that pretty much anyone can access information and instruction and education. I love that democratization, and also it's really frightening. That democratization is really frightening because anyone can access anything. And so what does that mean as a creative person who invests time and feels that their creativity is this long line of producing and figuring it out and creating and being innovative, and for myself, but also to put out into the world. And then I have all of these ideas, and I click online, and 5 million people, I can see that 5 million people have made it. And that I have an idea And I worked for 3 years making clothes out of repurposed fashion, and Calvin Klein comes along, searches online, sees that that's the next fad, and then suddenly all of the things that I make are no longer fashionable next year. And this has been my life. And so how to just keep myself quiet in that and just believe in what I believe in and believe in what we all believe in, which is community and connection. And I think that humans have a need. I was reading this book called Social by the scientist Matthew Lieberman, and that connection and being connected is actually a motivation all on its own. It's a biological need, human need. It's not something that isn't, it's as fundamental as like kind of food and water almost. And so Amazon provides you with, you can buy your toilet paper, or you can buy wonderful things on Amazon. I buy things on Amazon all the time. But that there's a need, and I think I was also reading that shopping was originally about emancipation of people, and I think it still is about emancipation. And what are we emancipating ourselves from, and what do we need? And I think I wrote down the things that I think we need, that people come into my store for and come into Turners Falls for, and to Greenfield, and these places where people are welcoming and warm, is community, connection, laughter, conversation, exercise, viewing lots of really beautiful things, an expanded view on the world, creativity, discovery, and doing things with another person. You don't really shop holding hands online. And the number of people that come in groups, or want to do things in groups, workshops and gallery openings, and bringing diverse people together. So.
Great. Well, and scientific studies have shown that lonely people die earlier than people who have community. So better get into your downtown. I promise this would be positive. So, but also you offer very personalized service. Like I came into your shop, and you put the idea in my mind of you could make something out of, like I was at my parents' house and my father died a couple of years ago, and my mother was trying to give, like, do you want his sweatshirts, or do you want, she's just trying to get rid of stuff, and I hate thinking of that stuff like getting thrown out, and you put the idea in my mind, oh, bring it in, I'll make something new out of it for you. And that's so personal. That's like not something you're going to get on an online mass retailer. So you are really providing personal service, like a deep personal service.
Yeah, I want, but that's it. I think that the interesting thing for all of us is, like, how do you balance making a living with also just belief in something and doing something. And one of the reasons that I opened the store was like, I'm fortunate enough, and I probably won't be saying this next year, but I'm fortunate enough to have the resources to be able to do this right now. And I'm not a business person, so I could be completely wrong. But I was, and I thought, well, I've had lots of conversations with lots of people in Turners Falls, and they all want that store to be there. And it's not that I'm the only person that could open something in that space, but I'm here, I care, and I can do it. So why don't I do it? Because I've got a set of skills, or I've got a set of something, and yet, yeah. So I don't know what I'm saying.
Okay, time's up. John, so your studies sound really fascinating. Can you talk a little bit about what placemaking is for people who don't really get it, and also tell us about how you're measuring vibrancy and what makes a place vibrant, and is that something that happens at like a certain set of things on the list that happen across the board, or is vibrancy different for each place? What makes someone feel like the place is vibrant? Even if they have all the, like, checkoffs, you know?
So, yeah, everything you're talking about, and, you know, first of all, you know, makes it seem like I'm some type of expert, but
You're just
anything
the token male on.
I could just say everything that you say, you know, my job is just to wrap it up into like fancy language and put it into a paper and then try to advance my own career. But try to capture what you're doing, you know. And actually, I think most of what I've learned has just been through living it as a volunteer, living in a community for maybe 10 years, volunteering with my arts council, and then watching the transformation of that, of our particular town. And then I'm like, well, how can I make a living off this? Because I'm not an artist, but I like hanging out with artists, and I can see how they transform our community. So that led me down this pathway. Well, I guess I got to study it, and I guess I got to figure out what it's called and put labels on things. So just to give you, I think it's helpful to know my background. So I spent time watching this phenomenon emerge in my small town in Hillsborough, North Carolina. And so when I first moved there in the late 90s, we had maybe one restaurant on the corner that had a lot of turnover. Even though it was a bedroom community for Chapel Hill, Durham, it really hadn't seen much growth, even from colonial times. It was a colonial capital. So it had a lot of history there. But I wouldn't say it was vibrant. So, you know, people drove through it on the way up to Virginia. But it had a nice clustering of a downtown. So the shops, you know, the architecture was there, the historical architecture was there. There were, you know, the old hardware store from ages is still there. But it still, hadn't had that energy. Well, we didn't know it didn't have the energy at the beginning. So over the years, we had this small arts events downtown, and over the course of 10 years, you know, now we have 5 restaurants downtown, 3 or 4 galleries, art galleries that sprung up. And those events had branched from having, you know, a guitarist up in the Artist Co-op gallery to having bands on the courthouse steps that might draw 1,000 people once a month. So our mayor, who was an artist, was interviewed and asked what happened and what revitalized Hillsborough, even though it wasn't that bad to begin with. And he said 2 things, food and art, not necessarily in that order. But we didn't, at the time, as a volunteer, we weren't consciously doing anything. I mean, we didn't know that we were playing a role in transforming the community. So anyway, after going through all that experience, I later came to know, oh, this thing that we did is called creative placemaking. Okay. So creative placemaking is just using arts and culture to change the physical and social character of places. So, you know, when you talk about creative economies, usually the focus there is just on income and money and you know, how can we get more dollars in. But really, you have to, I think the better programs and the better placemaking programs look at this as kind of strengthening the fabric of a community. So all these examples that we've been giving on the panel of those experience-based retail where people are drawn in to meet other people, to have an experience, to have an emotional connection. In a sense, you're taking over the role that other parts of society used to have in earlier times. So you know, back in the 40s or whatever, you'd have more of these civic organizations. So you all know about Bowling Alone, right? Robert Putnam, who basically documented the fact is we're just not getting together, we're more isolated. And so the downtowns can fill that gap, retail, and in conjunction with, you're asking about the public institutions, and I'm very interested in the arts public institutions because they seem to touch on all these different fabrics of society. So one of the things I've learned in this, going back to school, is so some of the fancy language is around community capitals. So, we talk about financial capital all the time, right? But there are 7 different community capitals. There's political capital, there's social capital, human capital. I won't list them all. But, if you have an arts organization, usually they're able to touch on all 7 of those capitals. And they're called capitals because capitals are assets that you use to generate other assets, right? So your social capital that you've been mostly talking about and cultural capital, that eventually will likely translate to financial capital. But some people, I think, are a little short-sighted when they talk about creative economies, especially if you talk about like the big cities that are trying to bring in the flagship cultural. So we're going to bring in an event center, and yes, you will generate income and have tax, you're getting your tax base filled, but contrast that with maybe a local community arts, neighborhood arts center where you can teach classes and where people can build up their human capital, so they learn things, they build confidence, they decide to stay in the community, that, all those connections get built and strengthened. So I think I answered your question with what's creative placement. Did you have any other questions?
So what did you learn?
The study, okay.
I met John because he wanted to interview me about this project he's working on. So I filled out pages of like minute details about vibrancy and what I thought was vibrant.
Right.
So what did you learn from that?
Okay. Well, like I said, buried in the middle of all that is it's a somewhat it might seem obvious to us given what we know and what you know from your tacit understanding of what vibrancy is, but I need to, as an academic, try to lay out systematically what we're talking about. So, I mean, your definition of vibrancy might be different than someone else's. So what I've done is, look through the literature, what the experts say vibrancy is, and we started to have some focus groups so that we could talk to people and say, what do you feel vibrancy is? And at the top, so I have the list, but at the top of the list, it seems to be this arts and culture, this creative, activity that's happening. You also need to have these gathering spaces, so people need to be able to meet other people, build up that social capital. But at the same time, you still need to have the strong economy with the shops available, that's another indicator for it. So, I mean, none of this is overly surprising, but some of the things that came out in our panel might be surprising to some people. So I think that having the grit available, so it seems as though a community might be more interesting if it's on its upward climb as opposed to when it's on its leveling or maybe on its way down. So having, and that's good too because you have the opportunity to bring in the newcomers. There's the affordability is still there. These are the people who are getting pushed out from the big centers and looking for new places to go. And so, but I think there's still a question of how to maintain that and sustain that life cycle. I think one way to do it is just increase all opportunities for ownership of not only the buildings, but the processes. And one of the things I've been learning is political participation seems to be key. I just went to a conference in New York City yesterday for their American Planning Association, their Metro chapter, and they were talking about an artist area, which you probably heard of. I'm going to mention the name of it just in case anyone heard. Gowanus. So they're talking about the alliance between the artists and the working class folks. So, and this is a nationwide, worldwide phenomenon now that we have the cities not really being equitable, pushing people out, and not affordable. But the artists tend to be an educated class of folks, and so they can serve as a leadership role. So trying to form an alliance between those people. As I mentioned, our mayor was an artist. Our neighboring town in Carrboro had an artist who saved an art center there. And you watch these ripple effects of artists playing a leadership role. And they think laterally, they come up with innovative solutions. I'd like to see some type of an art party form, in Captain Green Party. I know it would probably meet some resistance.
Karen's gonna be, you're right. We're all like, oh.
So anyway, I don't know.
If you're like a minute over,
Sorry.
but if there's something you really wanted to bring up.
No, I think.
I have a quick question. I don't know if it's quick or not, but does the physical layout of a downtown determine any part of the vibrancy? Like if there's no public park, or if there's, can communities shoot themselves in the foot in their planning process?
I'll tell you, one of the things I've been surprised by through the focus groups I've had, I always thought that you can't have as much vibrancy in a more rural, spread out place than you could in a downtown. But I've been contradicted in my focus groups, particularly in the Pioneer Valley, who stressed to me that there is vibrancy here, even though it's very spread out. But there just does need to be nodes. I mean, you need to have the farmers market, and in the cultural centers, but you can't assume that you need to necessarily have that density.
Yeah. Okay. Natalie!
I think, though, just to go on that, I think one of the biggest things that I hear from people who are, even people who have money, paying for parking is really, really disruptive to them. And I'm just
And I would say, as someone like on the municipal side,
Yeah.
like when we look at transportation costs and climate change, you can't give away free
No.
parking. It's like the scourge of America.
I
And so
know.
it is, I think a lot of it
It's
is
really
perception,
challenging
and
one.
it's, figuring out how to
balance it.
walkability and
Yeah.
parking structures and all that stuff.
Yeah,
But,
parking is huge.
it's, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So Natalie,
Yes, Lisa.
as your role as my boss, as the executive director of the chamber, how does the chamber, what role does the chamber have in creating a larger conversation and to creating opportunities for businesses and for people to come together to advance this conversation and to become educated as to what the community needs and what kinds of things can people participate in and how can we all work together in this communal quest to be more vibrant?
I'm going to be real quick because there are way more interesting people at this table than me. But for our chamber, the Franklin County Chamber of Commerce is very different from your typical Chamber of Commerce. First of all, we're not affiliated with the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, but we are a 26 town and we are a county-wide organization. And that makes us very different in both our mission and what we do on a day-to-day basis. And if you look at our membership, we are not just businesses. We have municipalities who are members. Community Action is a member, Big Brothers Big Sisters. So we in the Franklin County Chamber of Commerce are very much a civic organization whose mission it is to to support everyone, whether it's a nonprofit organization or a small business that's coming in, or a manufacturing business that has been here since our communities were first formed, and trying to help them to maybe diversify if they're struggling, or to make the connections that we're seeing here. We are also a regional tourism council. We are one of 16 regional tourism councils across the state, and so we receive funding from the state to attract people to our region. We have been responsible for Cider Days and for the Green River Festival, and what we're seeing is, as a result of bringing people into this region for tourism reasons, they're then choosing to move here because of the experiences that they've had. And so when this article came out, we were like, oh boy, yeah, this could be a real problem. And Otis, you gave a great voice, a great response to that. But I think Lisa and I both felt that the article was not necessarily a bad thing, that we on a tourism level are seeing that people are coming to regions because they want an experience. They're not just going in for anything else. It's really how they feel when they're in a community. And in our opinion, we have a corner on that market here in this region. If you look statewide, we have that creativity, we have the arts, that grit that you each talked about is something that definitely sets this region apart. I think that, coupled with the outdoor recreation piece that we have, those are the arts, the culture, the food, the local feeling, are all things that we have here in this region that really set us apart from the rest of the state. And so I see this as an opportunity for us to really capitalize on it, to use our position as a Chamber of Commerce and a Regional Tourism Council to not only bring people together, but also to tell our story beyond here in the Pioneer Valley and introduce more people to what we have to offer.
Are there any questions? Anna?
Thank you all. This is massively interesting. I like the different voices. And I'm going to go back to the grit comment too, because it seems to sort of be the theme of the panel a little bit. Speaking to the question of affordability and how affordability really is the tipping point, I think, between what is growth and vibrancy and what is sort of more damaging gentrification. I moved back to the area from Philadelphia, and this was a question I think that's on the minds of a lot of people in Philadelphia as that tipping point is approached and it becomes from one of the more affordable cities to approaching being sort of in the mainstream of cities. Is there a moment where that affordability can kind of be maintained, or in economic development are we all sort of on this escalator that is just always going towards the plateau of towns where all of a sudden, to be a successful business in Northampton is massively challenging, and so they all start to sort of look the same as being these wonderful, beautiful, locally made, highly unaffordable things. Is there a point where we can kind of stop and say, let's maintain some of this affordability, or is it just that we're going to kind of keep riding the escalator and keep finding new spaces?
Can I answer that? So I think one of the most important things to always know or kind of remember is that economic activity is always a cycle. So it is not a linear, thing. And I think it's been so interesting for me to kind of hear these stories from Franklin County because, hopefully, or maybe not hopefully, but, Northampton was the Turners 35 or 40 years ago. But there wasn't a moment where you could compel a property owner, a building owner, someone who owns that storefront to cap their rent, per se. Now you could maybe think about, can a state do that? Can a municipality do that? But I think the question that you raise is so interesting because it kind of forces us to think more creatively about what are the elements that can encourage that, not necessarily affordability, but democratization of the real estate market. So, how can we encourage condoization of multi-unit buildings? So if I bought my Beehive storefront, I'd still be open. But, I don't know what rents are in downtown Turners or Greenfield, but, in Northampton, we're looking at $46 a square foot. And that's not, right, we're not there. So, that's a moment where you kind of say, okay, well, instead of trying to get that number down, how do we change the entire system? How do we subsidize retail activity? I have this lunatic idea that we need some sort of AmeriCorps for retail. And how do we get people to, steward a storefront for 2 or 3 or 4 years and kind of know that things are going to evolve? But I think the most important thing is kind of keeping that cyclical mindset and knowing that, when things are I think in 1983, people in Northampton would be like, we've made it, this is great, everyone, like, nobody break it. But, we can't do that. So we have to kind of be comfortable with the cyclical nature of the whole economy.
I'd like to share an aha, a resource, and ask a question. My aha is this creative placemaking.
Could you speak a little louder, please? Thank you.
What I'd like, my aha. Got it?
Thank you.
You're welcome. Is creative placemaking and experiences are just a way to build traffic. And, retail requires location, because that's all traffic. So that's my aha. I never saw the relationship. The other thing is, I hear an undercurrent of lack of business savvy. I mean, people do stuff that they like to do, and they forget that they have to pay the rent on a long-term basis. And I just want to plug SCORE. I mean, I've been volunteering for SCORE for 4 or 6 months or something like that. And it's an incredible resource. I mean, it asks the hard questions and forces some business discipline. But here's the question. You're a real estate owner. Why aren't your rents lower?
What do you mean?
If the issue with downtown is escalating retail rents.
Yeah. But they're not $46 a square foot.
Yeah, I got that.
Yeah.
But
I think they're very reasonable, actually. And I think one of the answers to the question is that you want people invested in the community to own the properties, in getting back to what you were saying, because I care about the bigger picture. So it's not always about making money.
Yeah, and I don't think I could not afford greenfield rent for that space if my business partner did not own that building. We pay rent, but it's nowhere near what something across the street owned by someone else would ask. I think it's very important that, that's part of the equation, or part of the developing of the new equation.
And property ownership is also another form of business. So we're talking about buying buildings in downtown Turner's Falls that are falling apart.
Exactly.
That are so you're spending a lot of money. So getting back to business, we have to pay our mortgage and we have to pay for the property, but we're not in it to get rich. We're in it to pay our bills and to make a living. So
the basic issue is if these landlords weren't so greedy, everything would be better.
Often, yes.
Well, there's a difference between people needing to make a living and needing to get rich. And in a culture, I mean, that's a cultural discussion, right? Like making a living and how to keep everybody in a culture making a living that then keeps the whole country going in a healthier way, as opposed to some people getting rich and then the rest are not rich, and that's a huge political discussion, and all you have is community, and you have to just work with each other in community. So I know if that's the main reason that I got the store is because I knew Erin would be fair with me, and I can go at any point and be like, I'm struggling, and she gets it because she lives there, and she
And in the 10 years of all that we own apartments and we own storefronts, in the 10 years that we've had tenants, we've never once raised the rent on anybody.
And the nuts and bolts piece of it too, though, is, there's shifting people's beliefs. Like your approach to real estate is very different from somebody else's, but it's, it comes down to, municipal governments, state governments to actually think about what are the policies in place that either encourage that or discourage it. And right now, we have a lot of policies in place at the federal level that are discouraging people from taking Erin's approach, and that's a problem. But that's not something that we can sort of wave away, but that's where I think there's a really important role in the public sector to evaluate what those policies are. You know, that Jared Kushner doesn't pay income tax is a big problem, you know, but that's not something that we necessarily see at the Turner's level, but, you know, it kind of does trickle down to these industries. And so, you know, some municipalities are providing, I think it's Brockton and Beverly, a couple other communities are providing rent assistance for new businesses. So you apply, you're like, I have this great idea, I have a lot of grit, I have a lot of skills, I've never done this before, but I'm in it, and real estate is a big chunk of my overhead every month. They say, okay, we're gonna give you X $100 a month for this many months. You know, so that's a very creative policy decision that the public sector has taken. But I think, you know, we have to say, how do we replicate Erin's mindset, you know, and encourage other property owners to understand their stewardship of downtown.
And one of the ways to do that is to keep an eye out for, you know, your absentee landlords and people who are purely in it for speculative purposes, and actually leverage creative placemaking intentionally and use artists just because they know and they're going to make money off it. And meanwhile, drive them out after it goes up.
Follow up immediately on what you just said, because I'm on the town council on the economic development committee in Greenfield, and I hear all the time from people who want to rent spaces in downtown Greenfield that are vacant, that have been vacant, in some cases for years. I don't want to say decades, but I suspect. The rent, some of the landlords charge is too high, because like one of you said, federal tax law subsidizes vacancy to a degree. What can we do as legislators at the local level to change this pattern that makes it so hard for new business owners especially to come into, and I love what you just said about Brockton and Beverly, because someone just suggested that to us at our last economic development committee, and we were like, I don't know if that's legal.
Yes, it's legal. It's perfectly legal. That's great.
Do any of you have more thoughts on what we can do to really pressure these landlords, these problem landlords?
One thing, and I don't want to, I'm sorry if I'm talking too much, but you know, what I just mentioned is a carrot approach. The stick approach that towns like Arlington have done is the vacancy tax. And they've said, okay, if you are a property owner that has a vacancy for more, you know, a storefront that is vacant and that has been vacant for more than 90 days, you are required to register that property and pay, and it's not a huge fine, it's a couple $100. You can get out of paying the fine if you use that storefront, you know, window space for public art. And so it's this great sort of, you know, combination carrot stick, like here's the stick, but you can get out of it by doing this other thing. And I will say, I spoke at a conference a couple months ago, and there was somebody from Chelmsford there who was very angry about that whole idea and said, no, we have to trust real estate professionals to fill their vacancies. And Arlington was like, hey, we have the data that shows we've drastically cut down on the number of vacancies, because, you know, we're saying, it's not necessarily saying like, here's what you have to rent your unit at, but it's saying, as the community, as the stewards of our infrastructure downtown, we're watching, and we're not ignoring us. So yeah, there's a handful of other carrots and sticks, but vacancy tax has been talked about in a couple places out here, and then also out in the eastern part of the state.
I also think just plain social pressure. When I was at River Culture, there's a whole block in the middle of town, which is now all full, that has been vacant forever. And we kept calling. We wanted to do projects in the storefronts, and we kept calling and giving ultimatums like, the state's coming out to do this thing and your storefront looks terrible. We need to like engage you. And after so many times of hearing that, they're like, oh God, I can't just be an absentee landlord. They're knocking on my door. They're calling me out in Boston or wherever they lived. So just like these organizations, like chambers and business organizations and the, creative economy groups, caring about the downtown and actually going up and banging on these people's
Can I
doors.
follow up on that, Lisa?
Yeah.
Because at the time, I had heard about this person who had this building in town, that they were this unreasonable person. And I was like, well, let me see. I'm gonna go talk to him. And I called him, and we met, and he was a fine person, because when you talk to somebody face to face, it's a totally different experience. And I talked to him about what was going on in the downtown, and I asked if we could, since his places were vacant, could we put art in the building, in his vacant spaces? And he said, sure. And then I talked to Riverculture, and she started doing art in the windows, and that was because I didn't believe the stories. You just talk to the person.
Yeah.
And I think that's getting back to what we're talking about, personal, being personal. It's personal, right? And it's about connection and people. And so if you can't over-communicate towns and landlords and community, but keep talking.